Hi everybody, Dan Oman here with some exciting news. DRF Formulator, the gold standard in past performance information, is now free, exclusively on DRF Bets. Join DRF Bets with the promo code WINNING, get a $250 first deposit match bonus, a $10 free bet, and free Formulator already uploaded to your account. Access Formulator's premium features, including sortable trainer stats, race replays, personalized trip notes, and lots more. Free Formulator, exclusively on DRF Bets.
Hi everyone, I'm David Aragona, and welcome to the February 23rd edition of Horses to Watch, where we carefully analyze trips from the last week, looking for horses that might have encountered adversity in their recent starts and could be worth betting back when they run back in the future. Usually on the show, I focus primarily on Aqueduct, since that's the circuit that I handicap the most, but this week we're going to hop around the country a little bit. I do have one replay from Aqueduct, which we're going to lead off with, but I also want to talk about a race from Santa Anita and one from Oaklawn Park. Let's though begin with that local New York race. It is a race from Aqueduct last Friday, February 18th. Race 5, this is an optional claim here, 62,000, non-winners of 2 other than going a mile on the main track. And you can see that the number 5, Frost Point, breaks with the field, but is just going to sort of drop out to the back of the pack. And she is the horse that I do want to highlight in this race because this was a day at Aqueduct that didn't feature a significant track bias. I know that's something that we've been dealing with quite a lot over the past several weeks. If anything, the rail was maybe not the best place to be this day, but the evidence was kind of inconclusive. Overall, I think the track was pretty fair, but do note that the number 5, Frost Point, is going to be parked down on the inside for almost the entirety of this race. And she just kind of winds up in a spot where she never looks totally comfortable. And you didn't want to be down there, given that this race is so run in a fashion that's so bunched. The entire field is really traveling in a compact fashion. So she really just never has any running room to get out of this basically jackpot that she's been locked in towards the back of the pack. And you could see move around the far turn here. That is her in those blue Godolphin silks towards the inside. And her rider, Jorge Vargas, was trying to move her up to the inside of that favorite, the number 2 Ice Princess, but he couldn't really secure that path inside of that rival. And understandably, Frost Point gets a little bit discouraged when she can't get through that hole. And now she's in behind a wall of horses here. You could see that she's getting covered in dirt and kickback. He's trying to split horses here, but that opening never really materializes for him. So Jorge Vargas is going to have to alter all the way back down to the rail here, which is not something that you really want to do on a closer to make them run through inside of runners. But all things considered, Frost Point's going to finish up this race pretty gamely. She's not quite able to get to the eventual winner of this race, that number 3 Primacy, who just had everything work in her favor. But Frost Point did take a good run at her in the late stages when she finally found some daylight and some clear running room. So just a race where things were a little bit unfortunate for her from a trip standpoint, because she really was the best horse this day, just kind of got locked in behind horses in traffic for way too long and was not able to get out in time to visit the winner's circle. But I do think this is a pretty lightly raced Godolphin filly with a little bit of talent, and she's likely to break through this condition wherever she starts at it next time out. Let's move on to a race from Santa Anita, hopping all the way across the country to talk about their stakes race from their Saturday, February 19th card. It was the last race of the day, race 9. This is the Pasadena Stakes, going 1 mile on the turf course for the 3-year-olds. Let's break these runners from the gate, and let's focus on the number 2, for Andrew, as the horses come out of the gate. And you can see right as they break, he gets sandwiched between horses. Throws his head up in the air as he gets bumped really severely coming out of the starting gate. And you can see the consequences of that as they move by the stands for the first time. He lost all position coming out of the starting gate as towards the back of the pack. And I do think he was a horse that wanted to be a bit more forwardly placed, because as they proceed into the clubhouse turn here, you're going to notice his rider, Umberto Rispoli, takes a really strong hold of him. And you can kind of watch Do It for Andrew's head bouncing around. He's really not comfortable with that restraint as they move around the far turn here. And that's him in those yellow silks with the purple accents as he's moving up outside of runners onto the backstretch. And this is not what you want to see happen after a horse breaks poorly. You want to see the rider get the horse to settle towards the back of the pack and make one run, but that's not what happens here with Do It for Andrew, as he just gets way too rank under that restraint, makes that premature move down the backstretch up to contest the pace. He's now all the way up into 4th place, just about a length off the leaders as they move down the backstretch. And you don't want to see a horse make a premature move like that while losing ground around the turns, especially in a 1 mile turf race where they're traveling around both those turns over that tight 7 furlong course at Santa Anita. And you can see here, he's moving about 3 to 4 wide around the far turn. Now, this horse is going to flatten out once they get into the stretch, but I think understandably so. now, because he really had no chance making that early move after that significant trouble that he experienced at the start. And it should be noted, this was not really a race that favored horses coming from the back of the pack, because the eventual winner, that favorite, the number 6 Sumter, he just leads all the way on the front end, saving ground every step of the way. So I really do want to give an excuse to the number 2, Do It For Andrew, who had the trouble at the start and lost ground. This was the first start in the United States for Do It For Andrew. He had made his prior races primarily in Ireland over shorter distances. This was also his first race in the new barn of Phil D'Amato, who generally does very well with imports like this, especially turf horses. So I think this one does have some upside. I wonder if maybe a mile is ultimately going to be a little bit far for him. He might want shorter in the future because he was primarily a sprinter over in Ireland, but I just generally think he's a lot better than the performance that he put forth last Saturday at Santa Anita. Let's finish up with a race from Oaklawn Park on their President's Day Monday card, February 21st. This is race 7, a maiden special week going 6 furlongs for the 3-year-olds. Let's break these runners from the gate, and I want to focus on the number 2, Sin. This was a second-time starter in this race, a horse that had shown some promise in his debut, but raced a little bit greenly over a wet track, was unable to make the lead and kind of faded, getting discouraged through the stretch. Well, on this day, Sin did have the speed to make the early lead, and he had to show quite a bit of it to get there, because as you can see, these horses moving down the backstretch, Sin is on the inside in those red silks and the white sleeves as part of a 4-way duel, and you're going to notice some of the fractions go up early on this race. 21-1 for the opening quarter mile. They are absolutely flying in the early stages of this race, and you can kind of see the entire field is really spread out, and this is going to be a race that ultimately falls apart, and a horse comes from off the pace to win it, and some horses who finish in behind are going to close from well back in the pack to complete the minor awards here. But I just want to take note of the grit and gameness that this number 2, Sin shows, just fighting off all challengers until the very late stages. The horse that he's dueling with, the one to the outside on those white blinkers, that's a horse who was bet down to 5-2 odds in this race. You would have expected that horse would have been able to go by Sin, but he turns that one away as fending off all challengers despite setting that extremely fast pace, and just gets passed in the very last furlong by the favorite in this race. But he does do well to hold on for a second. You can see some horses closing from well back in the pack to get up for 3rd and 4th in this race. But this was a race that, unsurprisingly, seeing that opening fraction, featured a very fast pace, and that's corroborated when you look at the Timeform US pace figures for this race. If you check it out in Timeform US BPs, the fractions are color-coded in red. No surprise about that. And I'll just kind of read off the pace figure line for Sin. He got a 129 Timeform US pace figure for the opening quarter, which is very fast for 6 furlongs. And the numbers kind of just generally descended after that down to an 86 final time number. But because of that race shape and the running line, he actually got a Timeform US speed figure of 100 for this race, bumped up 14 points from that final time number. That final time number supposed to work kind of like a buyer's speed figure. So the Timeform US speed figures, they take into account pace, and Sin got a big upgrade in this race for setting that very fast pace in that Monday race at Oaklawn. So for just a second-time starter, I thought that he showed a lot of progression out of that debut with the blinkers added for trainer Ron Moquet on this day, and I think this horse could turn out to be a decent sprinter, but he's going to have to get into a race that doesn't feature quite as much speed if he's going to break his maiden next time out. So those are all the horses to watch for this week. If you want to follow these horses moving forward, you can add them to your horse watch on DRF.com. Just add them to a list and you'll get email notifications when these horses run back in the future. Thanks for tuning in this week, and make sure to catch future episodes of Horses to Watch on upcoming Wednesdays.